Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down the big topics. So, is the US locked in an economic long war with China? Or is that whole idea just, as one source puts it, a manifesto of paranoia? Today, we're diving into two documents that could not be more different, and they're both trying to answer that exact question, a question that really could shape the future for all of us.
Okay, let's start with a quote that, wow, really doesn't hold back. This comes from a report by Senator Tom Cotton, and it pretty much sets the stage for a massive shift in U.S. policy. The core argument is simple. America's already in an economic war with China, and it's high time we started fighting back. And now, let's flip the coin completely. The anti-war group Code Pink looked at that exact same report, and, well, they had a slightly different take. They don't just disagree with the plan, they're calling it dangerous propaganda, something totally manufactured.
So there you have it. Two visions for the US and China that are just worlds apart. I mean, how can two groups look at the same exact situation and come away with such wildly different conclusions? Let's get into the documents themselves and see if we can figure that out.
Okay, so here's a look at the two sources side by side. You've got Senator Tom Cotton's report, which lays out this whole strategy for an economic long war. And then you have Code Pink's critique, which basically says, hold on, this whole thing is just imperialist propaganda, that it's all about manufacturing an enemy.
Okay, let's really get into the core disagreement here, because this isn't just about little policy tweaks. No, this is a fundamental clash of ideas, a totally different way of seeing the world. We're going to break down what really drives these two viewpoints so far apart.
So the central strategy in that Beat China report is something called targeted decoupling. So what does that mean? Well, think of it less like a messy divorce and more like a strategic separation. The whole idea is to carefully, very deliberately untangle the US and Chinese economies, but only in these super critical sectors. We're talking medicine, defense, high-end tech, that kind of thing.
All right, this slide right here, this is the core of it all. The report's framing is that China is methodically working to displace the U.S. on the world stage. But the critique has this really interesting counterargument. They call it U.S. main characterism. It's this idea that America always assumes it's the main character in the story of the world, that everything another country does is somehow about them. The critique argues, no, China's focus is on its own people, not on some grand plan to take over America.
So, where is this so-called long war actually being fought? According to the report, you can forget about traditional battlefields. The real action, the primary theater of conflict, is the economy.
And the report brings out some numbers to back this up. Take a look at this. A 90% drop in Chinese direct investment into the U.S. in just a few years, from 2016 to 2019. Now, to the report's authors, this isn't just some random dip in the market. No, they see this as proof that the economic relationship is already falling apart.
So, what's the game plan to fight this economic war? Well, the Beat China report lays out some pretty aggressive moves. We're talking sanctions against anyone stealing intellectual property, targeted import duties on certain companies, and seriously tightening the controls on exporting advanced tech. And here's the big one. They even suggest revoking China's permanent normal trade relations status. I mean, that's been the foundation of U.S.-China trade for more than 20 years.
But the critique flips this argument completely on its head. It says, hey, China didn't ruin our economy, we did. From their perspective, blaming China is just a convenient way to avoid taking responsibility for America's own problems. They argue the real issues are homegrown, the result of decisions made in Washington, D.C., not Beijing.
All right, so this whole conflict isn't just playing out in the world of dollars and cents. The report argues that the front lines also extend into technology and even our culture. We're talking about everything from Hollywood movies to the research happening in university labs.
So let's talk about Hollywood. The report claims that Hollywood has become, and I'm quoting here, addicted to Chinese money. The argument is that studios are so desperate to get their movies into the massive Chinese market that they self-censor. It points to things like changing a character's ethnicity in Doctor Strange or even erasing a reference to Taiwan in Top Gun Maverick. Essentially, the claim is that China's market power is being used to control what we see on screen.
And here's maybe the most blatant example the report brings up. The 2012 remake of the movie Red Dawn. So get this, the movie was originally filmed with China as the invading army. But after the whole thing was shot, the studio, MGM, digitally changed all the villains to be North Korean. Why? Purely to appease the Chinese government and get the film shown there.
The report also zooms in on U.S. universities, framing them as another key battleground. It brings up concerns about espionage, pointing to programs like the Thousand Talents program as a way for China to get access to sensitive American research. And the proposed solution is a big one: barring Chinese graduate students from studying in certain sensitive STEM fields.
In sharp contrast, the critique says, whoa, hold on. They point to exchanges like this one between Senator Cotton and the CEO of TikTok. When the senator asked him if he'd ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party, the CEO had to point out, "Senator, I'm Singaporean." For the critics, this moment perfectly captures what they see as a paranoid and xenophobic mindset that's driving the whole narrative.
Okay, so we've seen two completely different ways of looking at the problem. So what's the path forward? What does each side actually propose we do about it?
Path number 1 comes from the report, and it's all about reforming the government. And we're not talking about small tweaks here. This is a call for a major overhaul, consolidating agencies, giving the Department of Defense more say in economic matters, and creating new committees. The whole point is to restructure the U.S. government so it's laser-focused on winning this economic long war.
And then there's path number 2, the one implied by the critique. It's a lot different. It doesn't have a 5-point government plan. Instead, it's about a shift in mindset. It says, reject the propaganda, stop manufacturing a foreign enemy, and recognize that China's rise isn't all about the U.S. The bottom line? Stop looking for fights abroad and start focusing on fixing the problems we have right here at home.
So it all boils down to this one massive question. Is the U.S. really facing a strategic rival that has to be contained at all costs, or is it creating a foreign enemy to avoid dealing with its own problems at home? The answer we choose, well, it's not just going to define America's future, it could very well define the future of the world.